can listen to it. It's on. Okay, so just to let everybody know, we are recording the session. We're looking to try and have some breakout rooms for this session, which our secretary set up. So we'll just probably have one breakout session, John, and then we'll just see how we go from there, so that Rick can go and have his dinner.
Right.
So otherwise, I'll introduce John Park, who's the very experienced gateball coach, referee, player, and all sorts of things. And John has a session that he's prepared for gateball participants, but I thought there was a lot to it that would be useful for all coaches. And it's about player-centered coaching and thinking about the player experience. So, John, do you want to introduce it, and then we'll start off the first discussion topic. Thanks, John.
Yeah. As Kate said, I've played gateball for a long time. I've dabbled in some of the other games. I shall probably be down at my own club having a game of ricochet tomorrow morning. But I trained a lot of gateball coaches, and I was involved in the first Greg Wymark coaching program in 2015. And after any coach training that you do, there's a form, isn't there, that you've got to fill in where people give you feedback. And you have to send those in to your state coordinator of coaching. Those forms, I've found that people are quite complimentary because they usually enjoy your sessions. They might identify one or two little things that need tweaking. But I once had a really good piece of feedback. And what that person said was this was in the early days of the current coaching program. And what she said was this, that as a course learning coaching, especially beginner skills, it would be good to have a greater emphasis on teaching skills. Less relevant for the audience, people who know the sport, is content about how to play. A lot of the existing material is just tells you how to play. And then she said, as above, covering more on how to teach skills and how to analyze performance, it would be good to introduce some basic motor learning and skill mastery theory. Also, talk could be common performance difficulties and signs evident in analysis and hints for correction. And that set me off on a bit of a journey, because I thought, well, how do we do that? And I thought the easiest way to get stuck into that would be to ask our players what their experiences were, also what our coaches were, about their introduction to the game. I'm frantically searching for pieces of paper here, and yeah, here it is. I've got Penny's copy. And so what I did was draw up a list of questions, and that's the first set of questions you've got on that sheet that I sent out to you. Under number 2, there was a series of dot points, and it asked people questions like, what challenge did you overcome in developing beginning individual team and thinking skills? And then it asked you to think of a player that you'd seen and what challenges they'd overcome. And what I felt was that just by asking people what they'd seen happen should inform their coaching. It should make them more aware of how our adult audience for coaching learns about our games. Okay, so I wanted you to go through those questions and to at least have some answers in your heads. And what we're going to do when Kate gets this working is we're going to divide into groups. I'm going to ask you to choose a spokesperson for the group. If that takes too long, just please choose the person whose birthday's closest to the beginning of the year, right? I'm going to ask you to report back in 10 minutes and we'll set a time on that. Right?
Is not available. Please leave a short message and it will be sent as a...
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So John, I'm just waiting
for
for Rick to come back so that we can set up the rooms. So does everyone know what the discussion topic is?
I haven't told them what the task is yet, Kate.
Okay, do the task.
Okay.
Yep.
I've told them that we're going to divide into groups and that they're going to choose a spokesperson, and that spokesperson should be the person whose birthday's earliest in the year if that takes too long. The task is this. From that list of questions I gave you, can you share with the rest of your group the most positive and negative experiences that either you had or another player you saw had, right? As they were a beginner in your various games, right? And please try and link that with, try and generalize it to say what is good and bad coaching practice. And then I'm going to ask each group just to present a couple of particularly outstanding ones, right? Okay. I'll give you a couple of examples because that's always a good way to show you the sort of the sort of things that that you want out of your groups. But I'll make them brief. Hopefully yours will be in more depth. One player I know, and she told me about this. We were dividing up into teams to play gateball, and unfortunately, within the hearing of our beginner, the comment was made, "Oh, I don't want her. She's not very good." Right? And you can imagine what that did to a beginner. Right? I don't think the issue was addressed at the time, but it certainly created an uneasy feeling for that person that was starting off. Another person I know, I actually did this question when he trained as a coach. I actually did went through these questions with him. And one of the things that he told me really upset him in his early days as a beginner for gateball was an absolutely rigid application of the 10-second rule. I know when we play at our clubs, we have to be just a little bit flexible with that, with some people, although that becomes a bit more serious when we get to competitions. Right? Maybe an equivalent to that is crushes and double taps in croquet, and how you deal with those with beginners. I don't know, and maybe that's an example there. That same player, right, was also a person who showed fantastic initiative. He wanted to learn more about the game and has watched endless gateball videos on the internet. He's taken initiatives himself, and that's one of the questions there. And he's our Australian expert now on what are the good videos to watch, and there are thousands of them because of all the games that are played in Asia. So if the groups are going to work now, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they are. Remember the
go.
question. Can you please share examples of positive and negative experience for you, right? And for others that you've seen as beginners.
Will do.
Right?
Thanks. Bye.
Think to yourself, what do they illustrate? What principles do they illustrate about good and bad coaching practice, right? And at the end, for your group, just give us one or two ones that really strike you that you think are worth sharing with the whole group. Is that clear? Head
Yeah.
nods or? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stephen Catt. That was a lovely head nod. Right. And Brenda's got a nice smile on her face, so I assume that indicates understanding too. Okay. Kate, over to you to create those breakouts.
Hold on a sec. Rob, I'm here, but I can't get my camera to work.
No, mine.
True. Just get some. Yeah,
So I think we're already in our breakout room.
Now that he keeps telling me that my camera's off, but it won't let me turn it on. Anyway, can't be helped. Yes.
Oh. I have no idea where I am. Oh,
Yes, I'm the
Okay,
same, Kate.
I think-
I've got no pitch or camera, and my
totally
mic
off.
keeps on dropping out.
So that's you, Doug.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're not up here at all.
I've disappeared.
No, I think we're already in the breakout room. I can see you, Doug, without seeing a picture, and I think we'll just carry on by sound. Otherwise, we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
So I think there's 8 of us. So that's
are
John,
there?
Lynn Graham, Petula,
yeah.
Rick, Penny, Brenda, Lee, Doug, and Stephen Catt. So picking up on John's thing, we're supposed to be talking about our experience about who's had a good time and who's had a bad time. I'll start by saying that I also knew a beginner who was just gave up completely because every time they did anything wrong, they were howled at by a player an experienced player who should have known that they should be catching people doing things right. And the converse was, I do know several people who stayed because people took a lot of care that every time they did something right, they got applauded and congratulated, even if they didn't do it very often. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd agree, Peter. I think positive reinforcement is the key to encouraging people to continue to practice and improve.
Brenda Lee?
It's just
I can see your
Microphone's
mouth
not
moving.
working.
Yeah, your microphone's on, but your sound's not up.
Sorry, what was that?
Brenda Lee, I can see is talking, and the microphone is on, but the sound is not up.
I've got no sound from Brenda at all.
No.
I could hear Claire. I can hear Rob. I can
So
hear
while,
Doug.
while Brenda Lee's fixing that, Lynn, have you got anything to add? Your microphone is off. Still off.
Is it on now?
Yes, Lynn.
Oh, excellent. My biggest problem when I was learning was after I'd had my lessons and learned, I felt that there was nowhere else to go for coaching. People were quite helpful if you were playing a game, but there was nothing concerted. And I put this down to we had no coaching coordinator at the club at the time. And so after a few years of complaining about this, I became the coaching coordinator. So, and yeah, well, people have been very happy about that, and other people have come on board now. So now we've got sort of 5 coaches, and we're going a lot better, I think.
Brenda Lee. No, I can see you talking, but there's no sound. Very frustrating for you.
That
Yep.
Brenda Lee who was just talking.
No, that was Lynn Graham.
Oh, I can't see that at all.
Yeah. So Petula,
Yep, I'm here.
any
I'm not really the best coach. I enjoy teaching people on a ad hoc way, I suppose. In Gateshead, most people that come to it know basic how to use the mallet. It's mostly about tactics.
Petula?
Keeps breaking up.
We're getting a lot of echo from you. Can you either try?
How do I stop that?
That's better. You're either too close or too far away. Keep talking and we'll tell you.
You do. It is interesting coaching people that have a knowledge.
That's good.
They, especially when they come from other, like AC, one of the people that my way of teaching was letting them make a mistake. And then, I can't talk with this. I'm hearing myself twice, sorry.
Okay, but your point was you need to let people make mistakes and not jump on them.
Yeah, well, that's what I do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And then in a session, I like to stop the clock and have a look at what other ways they could have done stuff. Some people don't like that.
No. One of the things I find too is rather than give people another shot, you let them have a mulligan where they replay what they did wrong. Because there's no point, if they're across the other side of the lawn saying, oh, you can have another shot from there. But letting them replay and work out what they did wrong is really good. Steve?
I don't know that I've had too many negative experiences. Generally, it's been positive. I've done a lot of come and try type things. I've done some individual coaching. I did offer to do for the Makara event. That's a Southern Sydney regional thing. I did offer to coach one of the teams or a couple of the teams, but wasn't taken up. Not sure quite what that says. Maybe they didn't think they needed coaching. But more recently, I think there's been a more positive sort of atmosphere about coaching. We've had, because of the experience of playing in Makara, we had two teams with quite a lot of people, and I think they got a lot out of the competition. Lynn will know all about the Makara. And I think that has made people keener to get a bit of coaching. And personally, I try to take a fairly positive approach to coaching. I don't try to criticise too much. If I do try to persuade people that some things might be problematic. Like I try to emphasise stroking the ball rather than hitting it. So I try to encourage people to stroke through the ball rather than hitting the ball. Trying to get consistent length, consistent direction and the like. And generally that seems to be taken on board. So I haven't had too much negative reaction. With the come and try type things, well, I mean, people are at a very early stage. So, they tend to just enjoy themselves. And I like to see people enjoying themselves with that sort of thing. And quite a number of people come back, join the club, and the like.
Yeah.
So that's my general sort of experience.
Peter,
Yeah.
I've ended up in this group, so I've been listening in, and thanks everybody for your contribution. Probably the time where we need to try and get all the groups together, and I'm I'm in this group. Are you near Kate?
Yep.
Do we need to
recombine?
reform the big group? I guess that's what I'm asking.
In the meantime, Penny Patterson.
I'm here, but I can't get my camera to work. It's coming up.
Thank
Camera
you.
We're going back.
We're going back into the big group, I think, are we?
Here we are.
Oh, it's reverberating.
And we should all turn our mics off.
Yeah. If you can. Okay. I don't know. I've got an echo, so if people could turn their mics off, that would be fantastic. Yep, echo's gone. Right.
There's been an echo, yes. There's been a bad echo. Yeah.
Right. Okay, John.
Yeah. Okay, I ended up in one of the groups, and it was just interesting to watch the technological issues there, which I'm afraid slowed things down a bit, I think, but what have you. Anyway, because I was in that group, I wonder whether I could ask Peter just to just to give us a few notable points from his group. And remember, what we're trying to do is to we're just trying to see what are the really important issues when we're coaching beginners, what turns people on, what turns people off.
Okay, the main thing was that people need positive reinforcement. You got to catch them doing things right and not criticise them, or else they'll quit. People need a pathway to improve, and an avenue where they can get further coaching as required, rather than just be left to find their way in general social play. And people need to be allowed to make mistakes, and if necessary, stop blocks and have a discussion about what's happening and what you could do, so that they actually understand what's going on, rather than just being hurried along and told do this, do that. Yep. That was the main points. Other groups.
Right. Thanks, Peter. Just to reinforce one of them there, I think that issue of respecting your learners, right? I think we did hear one story there of someone that wasn't treated overly well in that session, and I guess that brought that out. Okay, someone else that was a spokesperson for another group.
I'm happy to do the group I was in.
Yep.
So it's Kate here, and I was with Keith and Carolyn and Julie from Canberra. Carolyn was great in really emphasising the enthusiasm that you need to model for the sport, so that becomes part of the way you connect with the player, so that you're really enthusiastic about what you're doing. And I talked about that everybody brings something to the sport, so that it might be new. Croquet might be new, but they may have played golf or tennis or cricket. And so people will often have some previous experience that they can be building on. So we don't need to treat them as though they're not bringing anything already to the sport. But we also noted with older people, sometimes they can be very nervous about what they're capable of, and they can have physical capacities, such as arthritis or some imbalances. So it's important that we're really aware of that, and that we're working together with them to try and either modify what they can do. We've got a Z mallet, for instance, in our club, which is really handy for people with arthritis. So you don't have to have so much of wrist and hand bending. And so some people have tried that and found that to be helpful. But also just the way they're holding the mallet and the way that we encourage them to use their arms. And the other thing, I think emphasising what Peter said, don't put pressure on them. Don't say, oh, what did you do that for, you silly duffer? So it's not necessary to highlight the problems. And that's something I think people have found to be an issue, that you need to really be positive about what they're playing and encourage what they're doing, and building on the success that they are having. So so that were the main things, I think,
Yep.
from my group.
Yep. Thanks, Kate. I reflect two of your points there, and one of them was that adults bring a whole background of experiences, don't they? And some of those experiences are fantastic for playing mallet sports. Someone was talking to me the other day about if they were going to the left or right, how when they played darts, they stepped into the side that they were veering towards, right? I'm not sure I quite got there with exactly understanding what they do, but it was certainly the frame in which they were interpreting games. And of course, what you've echoed again is that motivation issue, that despite people's disabilities and aging disabilities, they'll keep plugging away at things. There's a motivation there, and if we aren't as coaches positive as well, then we're not going to get very far with that. Another group, please. I wonder if someone could. Have we got another group? No.
What group were you in, Doug?
I was in with Peter.
Oh, okay.
Right. Anyone else?
What about you, Lynn? Which group were you in?
I was in the first group, in John's group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Look, we'll move on. We'll move on. I'll just go through some points that that I've jotted down that I believe are incredibly important to know about our adult learners, right? As players are motivated to learn, they turn up and they want to play, but they need to see the relevance and practicality of what they're doing. They need to see it relates to them. So that example, for example, where Kate was talking about this Z mallet, which I'll be fascinated to see exactly what it is at some point. You're responding there to a practical issue, right? Most of our players as well prefer to have some control over their own learning, don't they? I've heard people say in the limited reports we got back that people liked their players to work things out themselves. And that's really important with adults, where 80% of us, we know what we're doing. We haven't got huge amounts to learn beyond where we are now. We've mentioned the fact that we bring a wealth of experience as adults, right? We also are inveterate problem solvers. Do you remember that example that I quoted at the beginning there, that a player who wanted to learn about how the sort of strategy of Gateball in particular worked out, and he was the one he went away and watched loads of those videos. He didn't want to listen to anybody. He found his own pathway to do that. Our players as well, right, are ready to learn when they experience a need. Hopefully, I remember hearing someone talking about being in the Makara and how that had produced a response in their players because they were involved in that competition. They saw a need to learn, and it produced results in terms of ability to coach the particular players. We've already mentioned motivation and the fact that adults are generally internally motivated. We don't have to turn up. We want to be there. We want to do things. And everybody, I think, stressed that issue of respect. We need to, our learners, our adults need to feel respected, and that came through loud and clear. Okay. I wonder if we could move on to the next topic. The next topic, I wonder if we could start this by telling you a bit of a story. I remember talking to a state coordinator of coaching, and he was having an awful lot of trouble working out what he should do to reaccredit his players. Right?
He's not players, coaches.
His coaches, sorry, to reaccredit his coaches. He recounted to me a story about a couple of coaches who'd got in touch with him and had said, we haven't had any new players at our club for a long time, right? So I don't coach, so I can't write all those hours up in my logbook, and I'm not fit to be a coach because of, I'm not fit to carry on in my role because I don't think that people should be kicked out of their coaching role for but not having enough hours written in their book when they really want to do it if they can. And that little story made me reflect on what exactly do we mean by coaching. And I think there are really three types. Firstly, there's formal coaching, like formal education. There's a syllabus. You do the coaching, right? And then at the end, there's some sort of assessment and you get a certificate for it. That's real formal coaching. Doesn't happen much in the croquet world. It happens when we become coaches. It happens when we become referees. That's really formal coaching. I, and I know others, have put together courses. We've put together courses through the Strathfield Hub and other hubs that we advertise every year, and people come along and they do them. Then they're not formal in the sense that there's no syllabus, right? There's no exam at the end or what have you, right? And then finally, there's what I personally think is the most important part of coaching. And that's what I call incidental coaching. And I wonder here if I could give you an example. Penny and I have got someone that plays gate ball with us regularly. I saw her over on the corner of the lawn the other day, and she had two balls in front of her. And I walked over and I said, "You're looking puzzled. What are you trying to do?" And she said, "I'm trying to work out how to twist my stick in order to make a slide." Sliding gate ball is when you hit another ball on the side, and it's got fantastic potential in the game because you can get from one side of the field to the other, right, and wipe out the opposition, right? So it's a really powerful thing to be able to do. But what she was doing was standing behind her ball with her stick, angling it one way or the other. And what was really obvious to me is that she hadn't internalized that early coaching, which she would have achieved, that you stalk your target. And she didn't understand that she had to step back from the ball, choose the target to the side of the ball she was going to hit, right? Stalk that line and hit her ball. And we talked about it a bit. She gave it a go and she was able to do it. Now, years ago, she'd have undergone some less formal coaching to enable her to do that, right? But it was just the right moment, and you could just see that problem with her, and we went and sorted it out, right? If I could give you another example, when we go through a gate in gate ball, we earn a continuation stroke. right? Right? Another turn. Sometimes there's a ball sitting right on the back line behind the gate, right? 4 or 5 meters away, that you need to get to in order to touch that ball and send it somewhere else on the court, right? So sometimes we'll have a player about to run the gate, maybe at a bit of an angle. The angles aren't so hard in gate ball, as you obviously realise. And they just go through the gate about a metre, and they needed to have gone 5 to get that other ball at the back, right? And sometimes they'll go, yes, I've scored the gate, right? Not realising that the incredibly important thing to do is not only to have gone through it, but to get that ball at the gap, at the back, which might be an absolute game breaker, right? And again, that might or might not be a teachable moment for incidental coaching. Some people will just hunker down and say, well, at least I got through the gate, right? When you're playing with them, you can't say, yeah, but you didn't get that ball at the back, which meant we lost the game, right? So it's that respect for player. Yeah. So I'm a great believer that as coaches, one of the skills we've got to have is as incidental coaching. And in the group that I ended up in, there was someone there that said they'd had their initial training as a coach, right? Oh no, sorry, not their initial training. Their initial training as a beginner by a coach, right? But there wasn't much that happened after that. So I really think that one of the issues we've got to address is how we do that incidental coaching. It's really such a part. As a matter of interest, all right? As a matter of interest, if as a coach you do about 5 minutes of incidental coaching, right, every week, and I'm positive that people do that, over 4 years, which is what we've got to keep in our logbooks, right, that amounts to about 12 hours, right? So for that, I started with that story of that fellow that said he didn't do any coaching. I bet he did some incidental coaching. And I really feel that we've got to raise it up in the States.
Yeah,
I wonder if. Sorry, Kate. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think it's a really good point you make, and I wonder if people have examples of incidental coaching. Do they do it? Does it work? I don't know if that's where you were going. We won't have a breakout group this time, so we'll need to do it. Sorry, I'm echoing. We'll need to do it just in the broad group.
Yeah.
So
our original plan was to go into groups and come up with examples of individual coaching. But as Kate says, yeah. Anyone got any good examples, please, of incidental coaching that they've seen?
Looks like Doug has. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah. One of the things we mentioned before was negative aspects of a game, and an incidental point that we try to make is if a player is disappointed that they keep on getting hit away, for instance, then we try to teach them where they can place their ball, where it's unlikely they'll get hit away or less likely. And that I think is helping some of our players enjoy their game a bit more, not having to walk 20 metres every time somebody hits their ball away. So that was a good aspect that I thought was worth looking at.
And that's lovely, isn't it? Because when we were talking about what adult learners need to see that things are relevant and practical, And so that's a really good example of responding to that theme of relevance and practicality. Anyone else?
I think Keith just made a point about that you often do it because you want to strike while the iron's hot. Do you want to say anything more about that, Keith?
Yeah, certainly. It's I mean, there's a need there. The person has a need, and that's the time to step in and do it. You know, at the end of the game, with GC, for example, and people say, "Oh, I can't do jumps, or I can't do a roquet at an angle." Well, you know, to hell with going back for morning tea. Grab them there and then. They've got that need for it. The iron's hot. Hit them with it then. And they absolutely love you for it, because it's it really satisfies what they want at that point in time.
Yeah, I do.
That's great.
I think Rob had his hand up. Rob,
one of the things we do in some of our GC draws is deliberately have high-low draws. So our Div 1 players are drawn with a Div 3 player as their partner, and by default you're coaching then all the time, because you're not in execution of the shot but in tactics or whatever. And so at Canberra, the incidental, we have formal coaching, but the incidental coaching just happens all the time, and that's how I learned, and that's how others are learning now.
Yes. Yeah. So incidental coaching is really important. I know that I love the fact that lots of people, certainly in that initial stage, wanted to be coaches, and have since dropped out because they couldn't bother with the online course or what have you, right? But Penny and I noticed someone the other day who we'd originally trained as a coach, and she was helping someone with their striking the ball, and I could see that she was doing it the right way. On the other hand, we've got another player who's been around the club for years, and she's got a thing about coaching, but at the same time, she won't stalk a ball. And when we have people in, right, she'll just stand there and hit it. And sometimes she's very accurate, but gee, she makes mistakes because she doesn't do that. And if we ever get there, I shall be delighted. But she bags coaching as an activity, and any other examples? I wonder.
Petula, I think's got her hand up. Do you want to come on in, Petula?
In university, it's easier because you can, when somebody's going to have their stroke, they can discuss what options they have, and you can use that as a teaching basically every time you play with them.
A lovely example. A lovely example of incidental coaching. Yeah. Can I just prod for one more area where incidental coaching is I think incredibly valuable? Is at the beginning, when someone's a beginner, we teach them to the grip, stalk, stance, and swing, right? But then we see people not doing that later on. Yeah. And people don't keep their eyes on the back of the ball or what have you. Is that an area where incidental coaching is just incredibly important?
Yep.
And what's the problems with? Oh, you didn't put your eye on the back of the ball that time. You didn't stalk the ball in a straight line. I mean, what's the problem with constantly saying to people, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you know?
Yeah, I was discussing this with John earlier. I feel as though if a person's stroke is not orthodox but it's working, I'm reluctant to intervene. So sometimes you can make a comment and say, oh, you know, how's your stroking? How's it going? How's your hip running? But if they give you the signal that they really don't need your advice, thank you very much, then I don't barge in. I think it's quite important for us to be respectful. People have to be open, or they're not going to learn. They're just going to feel like they're being picked on. So I do try and have the door open, but not force them.
Yeah. And look, if I could summarize this section, just to say that, and I think Kate's point there really emphasizes this, that you want to encourage self-assessment and a willingness for people to ask you questions, right? And that's your opportunities for incidental coaching. You've just got to be respectful and contain no sarcasm or put downs or what have you. You all know this, right? It's got to be tailored to the person, right? You'll have people, I'm sure, who you can get away with a particular approach with them, and others who you can't, right? You've told me that you want that you're supportive and encouraging. You're trying to, right? That you're a positive communicator. You emphasize the positive and all that sort of stuff. It's important that any incidental coaching you do is timely, and you've illustrated that with your responses, i.e. it's a response. Keith, who's up on my screen at the moment, is described how a mistake happens. If they're willing, you don't go to morning tea, you just sort that little thing out before you go off to morning tea. That was a real good example of something that's timely. And importantly, you avoid overloading people with stuff. That's when we lapse into just overloading people too much. There is a lovely expression which I like, which is that as a coach, you are the guide at the side, not the sage on the stage. You don't muscle in and sail this stuff. You should do this, you do this, right? You're the guide at the side. I wonder if we did this. I wonder if we did, and so on, right? And that, I know that guides what I try to do as a coach, and try to inhibit my propensity to talk too much.
So they've got a couple of hands up there. John Petula, is your hand still up?
No.
But Brenda's got a hand up. And you just need to take off your mic, yeah.
Right, can you hear me this time?
Yeah.
Yay! I had Rod fix it. We're talking about incidental coaching. Like I had a situation today where a lady, she's only a beginner, her feet were sort of halfway up the length of the mallet. And she was like, I can't hit the ball, I can't. I said, could I just, would you be open to me suggesting something? And she said yes. So I said, just bring your feet back. And I demonstrated to her with the feet forward, you can't get your mallet through properly. You found it. So I brought my feet back, showed her, and then she tried it, and she was just over the moon. Absolutely over the moon. She goes, I can actually swing the mallet now straight. So
yes.
Yeah.
It's a teachable moment, isn't it?
Yeah. And are you open for a suggestion?
Yeah. And we've got to be so good as coaches. I think that's the most important form of coaching, I think would be my view, right? Finding those teachable moments and exploiting them. Right.
So we've got Doug. Doug's got his hand up.
Yeah. Sorry, Doug. Yep.
John, one thing that I would probably say I'm a little frustrated about is players who, when you ask them, oh, did you practice this or have you been practicing? No, I just play every week, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one issue. The second issue is how do we encourage our players to ask questions? In that I'm just waiting for somebody to ask me a question so that I can help them with the answer, and especially if it's in a skill.
Gee, I wouldn't pretend to
It's a
have
tough one.
a dose of medicine, right? I'm not the sage on the stage that can give you a dose of medicine
Yeah.
to deal with that. It's like having a bunch of keys and an old lock that you can't get open. And I think you've just got to try all the different keys you can.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll crack the nut. I'm mixing my metaphors there, but you know, eventually you'll turn the lock, won't you? And
I think Doug makes a really good point. And I think sometimes you do have to give some space for people to ask those questions. You might say, look, at the end of this round of play, well, perhaps there's a gap before the next round. I'm really happy if people have got any comments or, they want to chat about something, come and chat to me. Or you might set up a time. Sometimes I used to do a little 15-minute before the start of a session and say, if you want to practice something or you've got a question, come along 15 minutes early and I'm happy to give you some time then. So you do have to be quite clear that it's an okay thing to do at that time. And you've also got to realise that not everybody will do it. And sometimes it's the people who need to ask questions who won't. But give them spaces that they can do it so that it's part of the culture of your club. Like if you set up a club where I tell you, everyone goes out for the draw, I tell you what to do, and then the bell rings and then we all come in. Some clubs have they have so much structure that it's hard to break out of it. So that's my suggestion. Just make some spaces for people.
And I think what the end of Kate's comment there was, it sometimes changing the scenario that people are in. I mean, we heard from, I think it was Rob earlier on, wasn't it, about the impact the Makara had on the attitudes of some people at his club. You know, and I don't know, I don't know whether this is an answer, but if this person just turns up and just knocks a few balls around and it's largely social, right? Then maybe something different. I don't know, maybe playing with another club or maybe you've tried these things, but something that's a bit different from the normal playing session might make that thing you want to deal with a bit more obvious and a bit more important for that person to say, hey, if I'm going to come on a visit to another club, I need to know how to do such and such because I don't want to look like a Charlie and I don't want to let my friends down. You know, I don't know, changing the scenario. Yeah.
So Peter made a few comments. Peter and Keith, did you want to add anything to that? No.
I just regard questions as gold. I've been training seniors on how to use computers and stuff for many years, and questions are just fantastic because it gives you an opportunity to explain something that is bugging them. And and then it leads on to other things that you can expand on. So
yeah. That's a great expression, Keith. Questions are gold. Yeah.
I love that one, and I think I said it'd go for an hour, and it's an hour now, and these things can end up dying because we go on too long. But if I could just summarize, would that be appropriate, Kate?
Sure. And I was going to say too, John, that in the outline that you've given me, you've got some really lovely pointers that you've made, and so people who are interested might like to get a copy of that with just some of the key points behind each of the themes that John's covered. If you're comfortable with that, John.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can send it around to people. But if you'd like to just wrap up, that would be great.
Yep. Okay. What we tried to do, and what I do when I'm coaching people now, is I ask them that set of questions that's at the beginning there. And when I'm training them as a coach, I find out a lot about them for that. And rather selfishly, I learn a lot from it too. Right. But it's all part of the process of recognizing the process that people have been through in learning the game. And there's points that you can make from it that are valuable for you, for a person you're training as a coach, right? They're valuable for that person in their actual coaching. They think back to those examples. You know, I gave you that example of that fellow that went away and watched thousands of videos and still does, right? Didn't want to listen to anybody. That was his approach, and that has stuck with me forever as an illustration of how well a learner can be self-directed, right? We looked at the importance of what I call incidental coaching. And I think with the agreement of the State Coordinator of Coaching, we ought to remind people that when you're filling in those coaches' logbooks, you need to write them in, and you need to be as good as you can at the. And what I've taken away from this session today, thank you, is that questions are gold statement, right? I was going to look at some potential conflict situations, and you've got those on a list, because I think by discussing those, you realize that the coaching issue, being a coach, is more than just being someone who stands around and I'm the coach. And people, I've had people say to me, I'm a coach, but nobody ever asked me to do anything, right? Well, you get in there and you frame what's happening. You ask people questions. You encourage their questions and so on. But there are some conflicts that happen. At worst, they end up in a complaint or what have you. I did hear somebody mention earlier on that some players some beginners were treated not well. They were abused. And that's just not good enough. And how we deal with that, I think, is part of our role as a coach. My favorite expression, which I mentioned to you, was that it's so important as a coach to be the guide at the side rather than the sage on the stage. I think that really sums up. We've just got to listen to people, work with them, be the guide at the side and not the sage on the stage.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, John. Are there any more queries or questions before we wrap up? Thank you very much, everybody, for being patient with our dealing with the with our technology. And I'll send out those notes of John's, which I think are helpful for further reflection. And if people have other issues they'd like to follow up following this, I really love to hear from you. So thanks
Kate,
so much,
Kate,
John. Yes, John.
Before you go, would you mind if I just did a summary of the stuff, because there's a couple of issues in there that relate to specific people, and I don't want people to be any risk for anyone to be identified that they're being quoted in there.
Yeah, no, I won't send it. And
I'll do a document.
Let's make it something
I'll do a
that you're happy
document
for people to.
Yeah, I'll do a document and I'll
That'd be
send it to you, and then
brilliant.
please forward
Yeah,
that
no, I
on.
won't do it until you're happy. All right, thank you everybody so much, and really appreciate your attention. And we'll look forward. The next session is on the Foundation Talent Elite Mastery Pathway Program for Players. And what I'll be doing is sending around a bit of a diagram about how that framework broadly applies across mallet sports, and with some examples of how we've started using it. And we'll have Juanita Weisensteiner, who's from the Office of Sport, is really articulate and approachable person about that framework. So I really strongly recommend, if you're able to come along, that I'd love to have your company. And we may have some of the coaches from other states coming as well, which would be good. So thank you for your attention, guys. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay.
Thanks very
Thanks,
much,
John.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Kate.
your time. Cheers. Bye-bye. Now I think I have to stop this.
Where?
Oh, now record and transcribe. Stop recording. Yeah. I can do that.